Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Quest for Wisdom podcast, where we search for nuggets of wisdom from the lives of some truly amazing people. Today's guest is Makis Moulous. He's a trilingual writer, poet, and spoken word artist. He uses his confident style to explore themes such as sexuality, stigmas, and gender. He has published 4 personal poetry anthologies and collaborated in various short stories and poetry books in Greece, Germany, and the US. Makis is the organiser and founder of English Poetry Slam competition in Barcelona and a Greek Poetry Slam competition in Greece. He is also the organiser of the annual festival Duende Sessions in Barcelona. The last 4 years, he has been experimenting with adding live music in his performances and spoken word collaborations, and he has created the band True Love Waits. He is the secretary of the new World Poetry Slam organisation and was one of the main organisers of the European Poetry Slam Championship 2021 and director of World Poetry Slam Championship 2022 in Brussels. Makis is an amazing human being, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. Welcome, Makis Moulous. Am I saying that right?
Yes, very good actually.
Thank you. So you are officially the second guest on the Quest for Wisdom podcast. How does that make you feel?
I didn't know actually. I thought I was the first one. No, no, very good actually. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here. And yeah, thank you very much actually.
Yeah,
And
I'm super.
congratulations for all you do actually.
Oh, thank you. So I'm super excited. Makis is a spoken word genius, Greek man, and also the organizer or leader of the World Poetry Slam competitions, which I actually found out a couple of weeks ago, which blew my mind, the fact that there is effectively a World Cup for Poetry Slam.
Yes, yeah, there is, and it's something very big now. Actually, we started working on it like 4 years ago, and the last 2 years we are working on it a lot. We've been working on it, and yeah, I'm not the leader. I'm one of the main organizers, but yeah, and I'm the secretary actually of the organization. But yeah, I was the coordinator, let's say, of the whole thing. And yeah, we had 40 poets actually, 37 countries participating from around the world. It was a huge thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that blew my mind when you told me that there is that much interest in Poetry Slam around the world to have 37 different countries putting forward 40 poets to compete in this crazy Poetry World Cup. And not just that, but in people's own languages. I imagine a
Yeah.
fair amount of people do it in English, but there are also plenty of like native languages.
Yeah, most of them actually is native language. Just maybe we had this year we had English, but native. So it wasn't. We didn't have, for example, a Greek person doing it in English. Most of them they did it in their own language. In the European Championship, there are more people participating in English, but in the World Cup, most of the people they perform in their native language. So it's super interesting actually. And we had translations, subtitles, let's say, in 4 languages.
In 4 languages.
Yeah.
So which languages are they?
It's because we did it in Brussels, in Belgium as well. So we have Flemish and French. So we had these 2 languages plus English and Spanish.
Wow, that's amazing. So as far as almost like the United Nations. So I think the United Nations is 6 languages: English, French, Spanish, Russian, Chinese, and Arabic, if I'm not mistaken. So you're almost there to being on the same level as the United Nations.
Yeah, but this is very complicated. I mean, if it was in another country, obviously we would have English and the language of the country. That's how it goes normally. But it depends on where you do it, because at the European we had the same, because it was in Brussels last year. But if I do it in Greece, for example, it would be Greek, English, and maybe Spanish as well, actually, because it's the whole Abya Yala, it's Spanish. So yeah, we appreciate that and we take it into account. So Spanish, I think there will always be Spanish translations as well from now and on.
And so who is responsible for doing the translations? Do the poets submit their
Good
poems?
question. Normally, we ask for the poets to send us their poem in their own language and in English. Then we do a review of the English translation. And then we had some students, translators, that they are studying translating or stuff that they helped us to translate in Dutch and French. And Spanish, actually, I did it
Did you?
with another Mexican guy. We did the Spanish translations. Yeah,
Wow, that's amazing. So these people that are helping, it's all voluntary.
yeah,
Is
yeah,
that right?
yeah. We were like had like 40 volunteers, people who are in the organization as well, because we legalized it in September there. So we signed with a notary and everything, and we are like more than 50 people, the members. And all these people are helping with whatever we need. So we have a website, for example. I'm working on the website. We have the social media. We had the partners helping us for the promotion, social media, Instagram, Facebook, and stuff. So, and then the days of the event, we had like 40 volunteers, like dealing with the artists. We have many people, with all the stuff we needed there. So it's a very volunteering project, actually.
I mean, that's amazing in itself to organize something at this scale through voluntary work. You know, people think that, I mean, generally it's more difficult to get people to produce high quality work or to dedicate a lot of time for no money. And
It's not easy. It's not easy because if you pay people, they take it more seriously as well, and there are deadlines and stuff. So normally, it's like 10 people doing all the work at the end, and then you have the other volunteers like giving their opinion, helping where they can, but not so compromised. I mean, you cannot have so many people volunteers compromised in a project. But we always, it's like it's an horizontal organization, so we always take into account all the opinions, all the. We did some mistakes this year because we had to take decisions like in the moment. So it's not easy all the time to work with so many people. So somebody has to take the leadership because if not, you cannot go on. You cannot continue in stuff that you have to decide at the moment. But we tried to include everybody actually in the project.
so you try to make it as democratic and horizontal as possible, but
Yeah.
ultimately you need some leadership and someone at the top.
Yeah, because I mean there were weekly meetings, obviously, with all the partners, the communication company we were working with the production team in Brussels, people who gave us the money, and in these weekly events we had to take decisions like now. If we had time, then we had the time to ask everybody what they think about stuff. But normally it was like, okay, we have to decide this now, so we can continue with the project. The last 6 months were like, wow.
Yeah. I mean, how did you get into this in the first place?
Thanks to the pandemic. Everybody was at home, so there goes before, there's it's still there actually. There is another World Cup in Paris happening every year. And but it's like nobody was. We started actually boycotting,
Boycotting.
boycotting this one because the guy organizing it. I mean, we weren't happy with this organization, and many people of us, organizers of slums, I mean, we had problems with him. So we're like, okay, let's create a new one, inclusive and different. And it's not only one person organizing it. We created a WhatsApp group of like more than 100 people, like organizers of slums and other stuff, even slummers from around the world. And from there, we started getting all the contacts of the slum masters around the world, and we created a database with all the contacts. And then the people who wanted to continue with this, started having meetings during the pandemic that we were all at home, so
Mhm.
it was easier. And that's how we started it up. And then, of course, less people stayed, less and less. But then we started documenting everything that we want to do, and we created like a drive, Zooms, Zoom meetings all the time until we created our manifest. You know. a website, and we started, and it was like, wow, everybody. We saw like many people around the world were like sending us messages to collaborate. It was like a bomb, like yeah. We started receiving emails, like many emails every day for collaboration with other projects, poetry, not only slam. We even received an email from Button Poetry and from celebrity slammers
Whoa.
from the US to collaborate with us, how they can give a hand and everything. And yeah, it was like, oh my God, what is happening here suddenly, you know?
Excited, no? Like
Yeah.
it's a lot. Obviously, it's a lot of hard work, but it sounds super exciting to be involved with something like that.
It is. It's not easy, I have to say, because as it's a World Cup, it means that all continents, all cultures of the world are in there. So it's not easy because I mean, I'm working with in a multinational company, for example. So I'm used to work with people from around the world, but there are people who are not. So suddenly, it's not easy to communicate,
Mm.
because it's a different the culture, it's different way of communication. For example, I can be ironic or something that is funny for me. Somebody else can take it like offensive,
Yeah.
So you always have to be careful of what you say, how you write, the way you write. The emails, the communication is very tricky when you work with different cultures. And of course, you learn a lot, and this is the interesting thing.
Yeah, I think that I read a book at the beginning of this year called The Culture Map, and
Mhm.
it's this woman. Her name's I can't remember what her name is, but Owen Mayer maybe or something like that. But she actually ended up becoming a culture expert and going into companies and explaining to them how to communicate cross culture.
It's very
And
useful.
it's so useful, but like if you live in Barcelona, the chances are you're going to be in a
Yeah,
multinational company where you've
exactly.
got tons of different languages. But even then, I feel like I wasn't that aware of how strong the differences are.
Oh,
Like, you know that the differences exist, but until I read it and saw it kind of structured and laid out, and things like you mentioned horizontal versus vertical hierarchies
mhm.
and decision making, is it the leader or is it everyone? Um, the ways to communicate, is it direct communication? Is it indirect communication? All these things. And I was like, this is absolutely crazy
It's
because,
crazy.
even England and France is our closest country to England that's not part of the UK, and their way of communicating is so different to
Yeah.
ours.
But then you realize, I mean, because I organized the European Championship last year in Brussels as well. I was one of the main organizers, and I thought that Europe was difficult. And then I was like, oh my God, was the easiest championship I ever organized.
Yeah.
Because then you realize it's Europe. So, I mean, even the communication is different between France, England, Spain. I mean, Mediterranean, we're different. But then it's Europe. It's still Europe.
Mm.
So, I mean, then you have people from Abiyala or from Africa coming to the events, and maybe they don't have water to drink. So this is a cultural thing. Oh, they hate Europe actually because So it's they have different background, while as Europe, it's like more or less the same background. I mean, we can blame Europe as well as Europeans for everything, but imagine outside the Europe, people they have different backgrounds and yeah, different traumas actually, if we can say it this way, because it's poetry.
Mm.
So yeah, it's not easy. I studied actually. I studied a bit of marketing and communication in the UK. It was like a module in my master's of finance. There was like a module called communication,
Mm.
and it was, of course, I was with people from China in the class, Africa, whatever, and we were doing exercises like every day how to communicate with a Chinese girl because, for example, they don't look you in the eyes, or stuff that you say that you hear, but when you live it, there is like, oh my God, this is difficult. I have to change my way of communication depending with with which person I speak with. Yeah.
And it's like another thing as well is a huge thing is giving criticism. Like some you
Mm.
have to give people criticism if you're in a position of power in a company, for example, and there's people not doing their job. But direct criticism, saying you are doing this wrong because A, B, C, D, E, or saying it in a much softer way, and you can really destroy someone if you
Yeah,
do that in the wrong way. And
exactly.
even then, obviously within cultures, everyone's different, but it's like culturally on the whole, like the generalization of that culture is in this way, and it's so fascinating to me that one culture can develop in this certain way. And I believe that a lot of it comes down to the amount of sunlight. I believe that a lot of it comes from, Spain, people are um, stereotyped as being quite relaxed. And it's the
Yeah,
same in the Mediterranean,
yeah, yeah,
because historically, if you're in Spain and you don't have any money, you probably won't die because you're not going to die of cold.
yeah.
You can sleep on the street and you will not die. The further north you go, if you have no money and you're on the street, you'll die in the winter. And
Okay.
I think that urgency develops, and it's like in England, it's very much like we have to do this, we have to be on time, we have to be tough, we have to be strict, we have to be straight. And I think it does stem from this cold, horrible weather. And you
Of
come
course, of
come
course.
somewhere that's warmer, and it's like everyone's like, chill out, who cares? And you're like, okay, yeah, maybe I should chill out a little bit, but I can't chill out too much. Like I can't chill out as much as you because
Yeah,
I might die.
but we have to accept how people work because we speak about work. I mean, each person has their own way to work. They read them and stuff. But in my company, for example, I have one manager, like supervisor, is from Germany, so he can come to me and shout on me, like, "No, no, I want this now." I mean, or whatever, shouting on me, and I'm like, "Okay," but. I don't know, an English person or a Spanish person will never shout on me. So
Mm,
it's a bit, it's not easy in the beginning, but then yeah, this guy is like that, this person is like that. Because if you enter and analyze each person, then it's very difficult to work. And if you work on a big project, it's very difficult to continue. If you start analyzing, oh, this person said this to me, this person said this, then you stop and you are distracted of the project. So you have to find your way actually to accept other cultures and to interact with people from other cultures the best way you can. I mean, you cannot change yourself as well. I mean, your past, your and but this is the communication thing. I think it's in general. We have to think before we speak to someone we don't know because we don't know the
mm,
traumas of the other person. Maybe we have no idea what has happened to their lives. So this is like a general rule that we have to be like careful with people we don't know, at least, or people at work that we think that because we are 8 hours per day together, we think that we know these people, but we don't actually. We don't know their personal lives. Yeah, I
yeah.
don't know why I say
No,
that. But yeah,
it's something that I've had to really work on myself is just don't say everything that comes into your head, especially if you don't know the people. Because so many times, like before, I just didn't care because I was so unconscious. Whereas now, sometimes I say things to people I don't really know. And afterwards, I'm like, oh my God, Connor, why did you say
yeah,
that? Like, because, like you say, you don't know that person's background.
yeah,
And also, that person doesn't know you. So they don't know if you're joking and they don't know if you're being ironic or if you're taking things out of context.
yeah,
And I used to as well, I used to flap my arms around a lot when I spoke and I'd be quite passionate about things. And I would kind of forget that I'm larger than most people. And if someone doesn't know me, especially maybe if they're female, and I'm there kind of waving my arms and shouting
yeah.
basically,
That's the
then it's
body
really
language.
intimidating.
Yeah,
And it was
yeah.
actually my current girlfriend. We met like 2.5 years ago, and she was the one that told me this. And I was like, I was mortified. I was like, why has no one told me this before? Like, because then I realized it because I started then seeing it in other people, and I was like, oh my God, like I
Wow.
must be just freaking people out. And I was like, oh God, I need to stop this. I need to just be more calm because it's just not nice for people otherwise.
Yeah, but you need somebody to say it to you. Actually, it's very difficult to see it yourself because it's
Yeah.
you. So I mean, my boyfriend many times he's like, "Oh, sometimes your voice is up. You shout, and people are scared." Or I say, that's how we Greeks speak.
Mm.
We shout, but it doesn't mean that we are like upset with something. And he was like, yeah, but yeah, some people from our friends, they told me that as well. I don't know if that's true. Maybe he says that to me. But I'm like, oh, really? So they seem like that. So yeah, it makes you start thinking. And I'm gonna tell you a story, something that happened yesterday actually, because now like, a part of the word communication or writing communication, we have the emoticons as well.
Mm.
So yesterday happened the most like silly thing to me. I sent a message to a poet because there is an event today in Greece, so actually yeah, about his performance. And at the end of the message on Facebook, I put a smiley, and he replies to me, "I please don't use smiley emoticons with me because I see them like it's like if you say to me, ah, ha, ha, you're gonna kill me."
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my god, I never thought about. I always put smiley emoticons, you know. And this guy was like, please don't send me these emoticons. They freak me out. It's better if you send me one like blinking, how is the eye, or
Mm.
whatever, but not smileys. I'm like, oh my god, this is something new. Now you see, you never know that the person. I mean, it was just an emoticon,
Yeah, and
a
I think that
smile.
I like thinking of emoticons like modern hieroglyphics. I think of emoticons and GIFs or GIFs or whatever you call them
Yeah,
and memes. They're like modern hieroglyphics, and people in the
yeah, of
future are going to be
course.
like, "Oh, look at these weird hieroglyphics that people use," because it conveys a whole message in
It's
one tiny little picture, exactly like a hieroglyphic.
yeah, yeah,
But you're totally correct because if you're in a negative frame of mind and you read something and it's maybe got a smiley face at the end, you can read that as sarcastic or you can read it as malicious. Like, I can see where that person might be coming from because
definitely.
I've been in paranoid states of mind where I'm like, oh, this person's taking the piss out of me or they're mocking me.
Yeah,
Um, but it's so strange. And when I'm writing emails, sometimes if I'm writing to a woman, I want to put a smiley face in to show that I'm being friendly. But then I'm like, what if she thinks I'm flirting? What if she thinks that's inappropriate?
yeah. This is
Um,
different. You speak with a woman or whatever. Maybe it's different even if you put a red heart or a black heart. I didn't know that as well. I was just putting red ones, and then I'm like, why people they don't send me back red hearts? I was
mm,
like, why it's always black or blue or whatever. But yeah, you have to think with who you are speaking to. But then with this guy, I had a problem because I will continue with like had a discussion, and I'm so used to put the smiley emoticon, and then I couldn't put it because this guy asked me not to, and I wrote to him like in a word, smile.
mm,
I just wrote it, and he was like, ha ha ha. I'm like, oh my god, it's just prohibited to me to do something that I do all the time. So it's not easy for me to stop it.
yeah.
It's like, automatic for me. I always put a smile because, yeah. For me, if it's just a full stop, I feel like, oh, that's so, you know,
To me, I read a full stop as passive aggressive.
yeah.
And
So,
my girlfriend, what she obviously like when you meet someone and you don't really know their communication style, and then they do something. At first, I was reading that for ages as passive aggressive, like, okay, then, dot. To me, I'm like, you bitch.
yeah,
I'm
to
like,
me
you
as
bitch.
well. I mean,
What do you
put
mean, okay, then,
something.
full stop? Like, how dare you? But then after a while, I realized I saw her doing it to her mum and everything. And I was like, oh, okay, that's just what she does. And I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
then I just got a little bit less annoyed about it. But I just want to rewind quickly. Um, you mentioned before that there was the World Cup Poetry Slam in the French one, but then you were started boycotting it. What was it you didn't like about it?
Uh, it was like this guy who was the organizer was doing whatever he wanted. I mean, he was speaking bad to many people. He wasn't inclusive. He was flirting with girls. He was like a machist, a sexist with girls. I mean, there were many people reporting him every year.
Oh,
And yeah, people they continue going because it was a World Cup. So imagine that for many countries it's very important actually to win this title. Maybe for somebody in Europe it's not that important, but for people in Africa, if they win the title, or Abi Ayala, if they win the title of world champion, their life is changing.
mm.
So for these people, it's very important. So even if they were a bit against of this guy, they keep going to his event because for them the title was a life change.
But do you
But
mean life? Sorry to cut in. Do you mean life changing for them in the sense of that they'll become minor celebrities, or
yeah, they start creating a career in performing poetry. They start being invited everywhere in the world. They start getting paid for this. So it's yeah, it's their career. I mean, if they don't win, then they know they have to work one more year, and then it's their dream actually to become the champion, because this is like change event for some people,
So
not for me.
which countries do you think which countries have the biggest scene?
Germany, obviously. Germany has the biggest scene. In Germany, imagine they don't care even to participate in the European Championship or World Cup, because their national championship, they have like 800 slams per month. So their national one is 800 poets participating,
Whoa.
or maybe more, and it's in a big stadium with like thousands of people. So it's so big that they don't even get to participate in continental championships. Now, thankfully, we found we persuade them to participate in the next European, because we want to have as many countries as we can. But yeah, they have the biggest one. Then it's Italy. It's a huge one, and then yeah, it's mostly Europe.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow, that's amazing. I didn't know that it was so popular in German. I do
yeah.
know that German is a very poetic language. It's a very kind of word-driven language with amazing literature,
Mm.
amazing history and stuff. So that doesn't surprise me, but I didn't know that. That's incredible that
I
they've
was
got that
super.
many.
I was shocked in the beginning when they told me a couple of years ago. I was like, "Oh my god!" But it's like, imagine all the poets there, the slammers. They have a manager. They have somebody they get money. I mean, they will not perform in an event or an open mic without getting paid. It's a job in Germany
Wow.
to be a slammer or spoken word artist. Yeah,
Well, I'm hoping that, as I feel like poetry is back on the rise. I feel like
me
you
too.
never heard, I was never hearing anything about poetry or spoken word 5, 10 years ago. And now I just see it popping up everywhere. And I was in London, when was it? A few months ago. And I was looking up events there. And I was like, oh my God, there is so many. Obviously, London's big. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
if there's 8 million people or something like that. It's big. But I was like, I still didn't expect that. There's probably like five you could go to every day if you wanted to. And I was like, wow, there's a huge market for this. And there was even then specific poetry events. So there was one called Troubled Tongues where I've listened to quite a lot of the performances there, and it's more political type spoken word
Okay.
pieces. So it's like niches within the niche of spoken word. But one thing I forgot to cover, which may be confusing some people, is you've mentioned poetry and you've mentioned slam. What's the difference?
Yeah. Okay.
And define
This.
slam for us.
Yeah, the poetry slam normally is normally is a tournament of poetry slam, which is a year, a period of 1 year, and at the end of this period, you have like the national championship, and you have a winner, and this winner is the person who will go to the continental championship and then to the World Cup. What's happening in slam? There are rules, whereas in spoken word performances there are no rules. So in slam, your performance need to be like up to 3 minutes in most of the world, except Germany is like 4 or 5 minutes, some slams, and I don't remember which other. Austria, I think, it's 4 minutes, but the general rule is 3 minutes. The text has to be original, it has to be yours, and it's a game. I mean, slam is a game, so you have people judging you actually from the audience. Everybody has the how is it? I always forget this word. The right. Oh, everybody has the right to judge art, so we don't have professional judges. So it's normally people from the audience to make it interactive. So you get points. As Mark Kelly Smith says, I always say it, the founder actually of Poetry Slam, the point is not the points, the point is poetry. Uh, okay, I'm gonna speak later about this actually. I have stuff to say. So actually, Slam is this. There are rules. It's a different concept. You cannot add the music to your performances. You cannot add anything to help you actually with the performance. Just your poem and your body. your body gives you the rhythm actually. In spoken word, you can do whatever you want. You can add music, live music, background music. Your poems can be 10 minutes, up to you. It's more performative because in slam you need to connect with the public actually, uh, to make them feel actually with no other help, no music, nothing, to make them feel what you feel when you're on stage. In spoken word, you don't really. I mean, it's like a theater play, but poetry. It's like the concept is yours. Whatever you use for your performance is up to you. So it's more free, actually, spoken word, and it can be more emotional, obviously, because you can use other stuff to help you with the performance.
Okay, so spoken word is basically just it's competitive, we should say. And you mentioned that in
The
the
slam is
slam, sorry,
competitive.
yeah,
That's
sorry.
what I'm going to
That's
say, that I don't like it to be competitive, actually. But yeah, we can speak about this later.
Yeah, because I remember that so we actually met a few years ago, as you know, because I signed up. I was just before I'd even written any poem, I signed up for this poetry slam, and I wanted to do something that was going to make me feel super uncomfortable. So I signed up for this competition, and I was like, I didn't know what was to expect, and then yeah, it was exactly that. It was 3 minutes, and then I think there was 8 judges in the audience.
Five.
Five was
It's
it?
five, yeah.
Oh yeah, 5 judges and 8 performers was what it
Hmm.
was. Um, and then I was just up on the stage, and I remember as well that I got the time of it wrong. So I thought I could like learn my poem in a few hours, and then I was like sat eating my lunch, and it came up with the event on Facebook, and it was 2 hours before I thought it was, and I was like, oh my God.
Oh.
And I went there, and I was the only person that was reading mine off my phone. Everyone else had
Mhm.
learned it properly and was like really performing, and I just like read it off my phone, came last, and I was
But
just
this is up to the poets. I mean, in Greece, at the slam I'm organizing in Greece, I have it prohibited. People cannot read. They
yeah,
have to memorize the poems. But this is just in Greece, nowhere else. You can read. The thing is that when you memorize the poem, it's a different experience
mm,
for you and for the audience. If you read, it's super cool as well, but it's a different
yeah,
experience because it's more difficult to connect with the audience. And what we want, I mean, actually, what I like when I'm on stage is to connect with the audience, because your performance is changing depending on the energy you receive from the audience. So the same poem can be different
mm,
every time, depending on the connection you have. If you read, it can be perfect, obviously, but you lose this. It's very difficult to read and connect.
yeah. In my case, I was so nervous and reading it, so my
I
performance
think
was
it's more difficult to read
terrible. I actually think that
sometimes.
as well now
Yeah.
because now, I do open mics and sometimes I go to events where they invite me to. But at the open mics, sometimes if I've just finished a poem, I'll read it, just for the practice of like seeing how it sounds out loud. But it is way harder reading it.
Yeah, that's what I do actually. In
It's
open
so
mics,
hard
normally I read.
because like there are some people who are naturally really good at it and they can read and then they look up at the audience. They
Yeah,
can read, they look up and
I
they look
can't.
around. But for me, if I'm reading it, I'm concentrating on reading it, and that's that. Whereas if you do learn it and you know it well, then it gives you that freedom to
Exactly.
be kind of not that I'm particularly good at the performance side of it, but you at least you can see the audience. Well, usually you can't even see them that much because the lights are so
Yeah,
bright, they're
but you
blinding
can
you. But
feel them.
you can at least look around and you can feel it. And when
Hmm.
people are laughing, you can stop and you get that sense more. And it is because I suppose the three different categories you get, and I only found this out recently, the difference between poetry and spoken word. And now I know it's super obvious. Spoken word is spoken word, and poetry is written for the paper usually. That's the
Hmm.
distinction. So usually poetry is on paper and then it's read out as if it was like from a book or something, whereas spoken word is designed to be performed,
Yeah,
and that's the difference. And I was like, well, yeah, that makes sense why it's called spoken word. But then
yeah.
slam is like the competitive version.
Slam is the competitive, and it's there are rules, and it's tournament. Then you have in your mind, oh my god, if I win, I can go there and this biggest event or whatever. And it shouldn't be like that actually. But yeah, it's a normal way of human beings. So it's like yeah. If you're gonna go actually abroad, the easiest way is to win slams.
Yeah. Well, I think it just it. I mean, I know that some people they're against the competitive side of it because they're like
Yeah,
art shouldn't be competitive, and I totally understand that point. But then I also totally understand human nature, and it's
yeah.
like we are competitive, and it's also when you put yourself forwards and you do something super personal and uncomfortable for most people, like at least at first when you're not used to it, it's difficult releasing that emotion out. And obviously, you get a few claps, that's rewarding. You win a poetry slam competition, super rewarding. It's
Mhm.
feedback for the hard work you've put in, and it's natural.
But at the same time, it doesn't mean that if you become last, that you weren't good. You know what I mean? Because it's like these five people judging you. Maybe these people they wanted to listen to love poems this day, so somebody who did that super good love poem wins, and then next day the judges they want to listen to social or political poems, and this person would be last. So it's not like it doesn't mean that you are the best if you win
No,
a slam.
100%, 100%, because part of it, I suppose, is writing for the audience, writing something that's going to be universally liked, which is a different skill.
It cannot be universal. I mean, even this now that I have the experience, I mean, maybe you have a masterpiece here, like in Barcelona, everybody loves it, and you go in Spain and it's this super poem, and then you go and perform this poem in London, and they're like, oh my God, that's just it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it depends where you live, what are the struggles at this period in this country. So because you write about this stuff anyway, or even, I mean, if I do hear a poem for and the theme is like LGBTQI plus themed based, if I do it here, people will be like, okay, but here it's not that problem, you know. But if I do it in Greece or somewhere that people are struggling more there, it will be like, oh my God, wow. That's
Mm.
what I mean. It depends where you live, what you live, and what you write, and you can go somewhere else in this poem. Or people from Africa now at the World Cup. I mean, actually, the champion is from South Africa, but because the poem, I think, was like it had like super strong stuff inside, but general as well. But people who were just talking just for the struggles in Africa, just I mean, the Europeans couldn't realize what's happening. I mean, they cannot feel it. They cannot empathize so much.
Mm.
So this poem there is perfect, but in Europe maybe it's not that. Not it's, that it's not perfect, but people cannot enter.
Yeah, yeah.
They cannot, feel like you feel in the poem.
Do you remember the name of the South African guy?
Yeah, it's Sabisovili.
Chabi Sovile.
Sabisovili, yeah.
Sabi
This guy
Sovile.
is amazing. But for example, this guy, I mean, in Africa, there are like many workshops of performing poetry, and maybe they work like 8, 10 hours per day rehearsing.
Whoa.
So, I mean, yeah, who can do that? In
Yeah.
Europe, I mean, if you have your job, that's why I say then it's a job. And it becomes like your career. So
Yeah.
it's like 8 hours per day rehearsals, then this and that, and it's everything in detail. I mean, this guy was like perfect. The performance, the poem, all the movements, everything was in perfection.
Yeah, because I remember when I did the slam, I like you said that obviously you can't make something that's universally liked, but there's always going to be some people who do like what you do. And
Always,
for me, getting up on that stage, that was a victory. And I
yeah.
was so proud of myself after doing that. I didn't care whatsoever that I came last. Like my
You see,
performance,
yeah.
out of the eight people, I 100% my performance was last. My poem, I don't think was, in my opinion, I don't think was the worst poem, but my performance was definitely the worst. But I there was at least two, maybe three people that came up afterwards and said they loved the poem. And so then you get that pride for going up there and like doing
That's
something
what I love
horrible.
actually in
And then
performance.
someone comes up to you and they're like, the poem I'd done was the little boy from Syria,
Yeah,
like
yeah, I
about the
remember.
refugee. And then someone came up and they were like, it really touched me. I really loved it. And, you know, but my reason for writing that is just to kind of spread a little bit of awareness and
Yeah.
just again to tell a story. I like telling stories, even though it's a fake story, like a fictional story. But and then you just that makes the whole thing worth it. The
Yeah.
time you spent writing
Even
it.
if it's one person, that's why I like live performing and not. I like it's different than reading a book because or writing a book. Actually, if you write a book, Maybe you sell like 5,000 copies, but you have no idea if somebody read it.
Mm.
When you do a poem on stage, you know that these people there, they listened to this poem, and somebody comes to you and give you a feedback. It's amazing.
It is.
If it's a book, you never know if they liked it, if they read it, even if you sold like thousands of copies. On stage, you always have the live audience, and you know that this poem is gonna be heard.
Yeah, it's such a lovely feeling because at the beginning I I struggled with the thought of what I'm doing is narcissistic because I was like, I want the praise from people,
No,
but I'm
it's
like,
helping people.
it's that's. But then I realized that's how I justified it to myself afterwards because I tend to always think the worst of myself, but I think that I've managed to control that a little bit now, see the worst side and think, actually, no, I'm not doing that. I'm doing it because number one, I enjoy it. I have something to say, but ultimately, I would like to impact people positively in one way or another. But if you're a creative person and you're exposing yourself by writing something personal, sometimes you need a little bit of feedback because
Yeah,
otherwise, if you're exposing yourself like this and nobody's giving you any feedback, unless you've got some rock solid self esteem, that's going to have a big impact on you because it's like you need that feedback
yeah,
from, you
yeah.
need live feedback from people, you
I always
know?
say to the slam, go to the slammers, to the poets, speak to them after the show. That's what they need. That's what we need. This feedback is very, but it's like exposing yourself and say personal stuff as well. It's like it's trauma healing
It is, yeah.
for many people who are in the room. That's why, and when this happens, it's like, but even if nobody comes to speak to you, you feel it on stage. I mean, you
Mm,
feel the connection, and you feel it. So this is a feedback as well for me.
yeah. For me, like, it has changed my life. The performing side of it
Mine
has
as well.
has opened up a whole avenue of life. You know, it's totally revolutionized my whole life because I've got a hobby now. I've got something to do. I have a reason for socializing. I have a reason to go to events and to search for events and to want to go to other places because I stopped drinking like a few years ago. I stopped taking drugs. And then when you stop drinking, you stop taking drugs, you have a girlfriend, your reasons for wanting to go out go down, you know, because I'm like,
Yeah.
a lot of well, 90% of my reason for wanting to go out before all the time was to take drugs, get drunk, and try and get laid. And if you're not trying to do any of those things, then I'm like, why would I go out? I don't want to go talk to people, make stupid conversation in bars with random people. Like, don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But then you do something like this, and I'm like, you know, Tuesday, go to anything else, and I see amazing musicians, amazing spoken word people, a little bit of comedy. Then you chat to these amazing people, and everybody's like, when you chat to them, you have number one, you have a reason to start talking to someone because I hate starting conversations with people. I always feel like they don't want to talk to me and I'm just going to be irritating them. So I always wait for people to start talking to me. And if you perform, it's brilliant because people come up and talk to you and say nice things, which is nice. And then that just breaks the ice, opens the door, and then you just meet loads of nice people, nice creative people who are all trying to do exciting things. And I just think that not everybody has it in them where they care about performing or using their voice, but there's a huge chunk of the population who need to speak, you know, who
Yeah,
have an
yeah, yeah. I
inherent need
completely agree.
to voice their opinions and just to let things out. And it tends to be the more sensitive, creative type that they have to let it out because if not, all this stuff builds up inside of them
Yeah,
and they've got no way of
explode.
expressing it and they explode or they go out and take drugs or just try and do whatever they can just to get rid of this internal suffering, I suppose, that's just,
Yeah, no, it's amazing, and it's actually it depends on your struggles. This you can see it in in the performance of each person as well. I mean, because I hear many times, oh, this person shouts a lot. I don't like the performance. No, no, let them shout.
mm,
They need it. That's why they do it. They don't shout just to scare you. It's like they like performing, shouting. Why not?
yeah,
I mean, you start accepting different stuff because before we try to accept everybody as they are, blah blah. But then you see performance. The first time you're like, oh my god, all amazing, and then you start having an opinion about how the other person is performing. And it's like we always like to criticize, when you feel like, okay, now I know more about these people, now I'm gonna start criticizing them.
Mm.
So for me, this was new as well. I mean, they told me sometimes, oh, yeah, but you shout a lot. I said, yeah, because that's why I came here. I to
Mm.
do this poem and shout. That's what I needed. I don't need, I mean, I don't, that's why we do it. If not, we stop. If we start performing the way the others want us to perform, then why do it?
Yeah. It's like, for example, I was at End of the Coronaverse a few weeks ago, and it was the first two poets were one of them was, I think he was mixed race, either black or mixed race, and the next one was black. So one of them's English and one of them's American. And then the first guy, his poem, first one was about love, second one was about racism, the racism that he'd experienced and his struggles being black and people's perceptions of him. Then the second girl, she did one of her three poems was about her being sexually assaulted, like someone effectively trying to rape her. And so, but they were both brilliant. The second girl, especially, I can't remember her name, so I can't plug her, but she was an amazing performer. And even though she was telling something dark, she performed it in almost a light way. And she had that American way about her where she's just so excellent at performing. But it's really dark stuff,
Mhm.
and that's quite often my first few experiences of spoken word and two brilliant people. You probably know Becky
Yeah.
and Mariah. They were, I think, were the two first people really I saw doing spoken word, and they both. I don't know much about Becky, but her stuff is quite intense sometimes, and she's quite an intense person when she performs, but brilliant. Mariah also has
Yeah,
had
she has
some.
her style. I mean, each one, we have our styles, how to pass stuff to the audience. So, as I always say, we need to respect every word that we wrote,
Mm,
and we need to make this word to be heard from the people. And Becky, for example, she has this amazing rhythm,
mm,
and you don't lose not even one verse of what she
yeah.
says. You are like stuck on. So yeah, the performing style is important, and yeah, some people they have it like they know how to connect and how to pass all the stuff to the other people. This is very interesting for me actually. And then it's Asling that for me is one of my favorites as well. Asling,
Oh, she's
it's
fantastic.
different style, different poems, but still, so strong.
I'll try and when I post this, I'll get there. I'll link them all at the end. But yeah, that's the amazing thing is just seeing all of these different styles. And then for me now that I've got this new little mini career, at the moment, I think my grand total earning this year is 43 euros, which I'm super happy about because it's 43 euros more than zero.
Yeah, yeah, wow.
But it's not about the money
Nah.
anyway. Like if you can earn money doing it and sell shows and stuff in the future, awesome. But for now, I think that it's enhancing my personality and my life massively. And I would
And you
just,
always have something to work on. I mean, as
yeah,
you said before, your first performance, you didn't like your performance. The poem was amazing, but then you saw the other performance, and then you start working on your performance. You start working on your poems, maybe more. So you always have something to get better. So you always have something to work on. And this is my first performance. I saw it on video like it was like 8 years ago, and I was like, oh my god, why the fuck did I do that? Why did I go on stage to humiliate myself? It was in Spanish, in the Spanish slam. But then I remember this moment when I went on stage, and it was like, oh my god, I feel so brave that I went on stage in Spanish,
mm,
I memorized the poem first time in my life in Spanish, which is not my language, in front of 800 people.
wow,
And I'm like, I don't care if I was good.
yeah,
I
who
don't care.
cares?
I was last, I think, as well. I didn't even see the voting, the scores. I was
mm,
just went off the stage, and I didn't even want to see my scoring. I didn't care. Yeah, oh my god, I did that.
yeah.
And after this, everything changed.
Like the thing is that in other aspects of my life, say if it was work or school or whatever, if I'd have come last in something, I would have been devastated. Whereas coming last in this, I could not have been happier.
You
I walked
always
off that
win.
stage with like, exactly, you always win.
Yeah.
And that is the amazing, amazing thing about any type of performance, you know. And it's like people are just, you think that, oh, people are going to laugh at me because I'm stupid, and people are so nice,
Yeah,
even if they don't like your stuff. And it's okay to not like somebody's poem
of
because,
course.
or their song or whatever. It's totally fine, but you still have that respect for someone
Yeah.
because they're getting up on the stage. And it's like my main reason, I think, for signing up to the Poetry Slam in the first place was I thought to myself, well, if I can get up on stage and perform a poem that I've written, I can do anything.
Yeah, it's not
Anything.
easy. I mean, some people they think it's easy. It's not easy at all. We are not actors or
No,
actresses. You know, I mean, it's our text. We are not performing a text that somebody else wrote. This would be easier.
because
But to say your thoughts, for me, it's very difficult. Every time I go on stage.
I
Uh,
thought that I've done two stand-up sets now, and it I find it I thought I would be so nervous doing the stand-up set, but I actually felt mega comfortable doing that because you're just talking. And yeah, it's your own stuff you've written, but it's very similar just to real life, you know, telling a story, trying to make people laugh, haha, that's
correct.
what I do in real life. Whereas going on and performing a poem, now that makes me way more nervous because it's a direct door into your soul. And like I've got two different branches of my poetry. So I've got the more serious stuff where I talk about, you know, my personal things and my past and addiction and what's going on or whatever. And then I've got the funny ones. And obviously like the performing the funny ones does not make me so nervous because I'm just creating a funny little character, and I
Yeah.
know I'll get some laughs at least because it's it's quite universal. I wanted to make something which was like family friendly and relatively universal. So I started with the mosquito, you know, something that every person can at
Yeah,
least
yeah.
understand and relate to, because I wanted to see if I could write something that wasn't depressing because I was always writing depressing things and
But you see, that's a good thing because it's periods that we pass. I mean,
mm,
me, I had like most of the years I was writing like more depressing stuff, and then I was like, okay, this year I'm going to change. I'm gonna write porn poems.
porn poems.
Yeah, I
Oh,
was like for
nice.
a year writing porn poems, and then I was like, I'm gonna write funny poems,
Mm,
and then it's up to you. You choose what you write, and then something happens in your life which is strong, so you go back because you need to take it out. So you go back writing like more serious stuff. Or it's up to you, but that's a very nice thing because we have our periods of what we want to write and we feel that we want to pass to the people. And with stand-up comedy, with comedy, we have a common thing. We are with the audience, and we have the power. Actually, we are on the power to control what the audience will feel.
mm,
So the tense of the audience, I mean, we control them. With one word in comedy, you can make people laugh like for so long. And in poetry as well, one word can kill them.
yeah.
I mean, you know that when a verse or a word is very strong, and you know how to say it, and you know that you control them. And in comedy, you know what will make them laugh. I mean, so it's like you have the control to the audience emotions in both, even if it's for laughing or for crying. I mean, I had this period that I was like, okay, this time I'm gonna go to this slam, and I don't care to win and my scoring, but I want to make people cry.
Yeah.
So if I see two, three people crying in the audience, for me, that's okay. That's what I want to do today.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I think it's so nice and important. I think it's easy to write when you're depressed. I think it's easier to write things when you're depressed than to let those sad emotions out. For me, anyway, it is. Then I think that often people forget to write when they're happy
yeah,
because people use writing as therapy for themselves and
yeah,
catharsis. And then when things are going well, people forget about it. It's like you need to write about the. Someone said it to me recently. I can't remember who, but they're like, you need to write when you're positive as well. And so I set this habit for myself where I write every day before I go to bed. And for a while, I was doing it in the morning, like before I go to bed, 10 minutes, and I write some random things,
hmm
and then I maybe switch to another poem, but every day, because it means sometimes I'm pissed off, and I'm writing something pissed off.
yeah,
Sometimes I'm happy, and I'm like, today like, life is so incredible, I love life, and like all this stuff. And then sometimes I look back at it, I'm like, oh my God. And then, you know, you write some random thing and something else, but it's like, then it shows the whole spectrum of emotions that you can feel. And
Exactly. Yeah.
it's amazing. It's so amazing.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing actually, and that's if you write every day, obviously you write stuff that people can connect as well. I
Mm.
mean, the stuff that we live in our everyday life, and that stuff people want to listen, so they don't feel alone. That's why people they go to listen poetry because that
Mm.
makes them not feel alone.
100%. And the funny thing is, the funny thing about humans anyway, is that we like listening to sad things. We like watching sad things, which makes no logical sense when you think about it. But listening to, I can't remember I read it before, but listening to sad music when you're sad actually makes you feel happier. And I imagine it's probably the same with poetry as well, because people go there and they love consuming it. They love consuming the really sad stuff and the
Yeah,
really powerful
many
stuff.
times I said I go to Kelly's event, anything else, or other open mics, and I'm like, I'm at home and I'm like super sad. I'm like, I don't want to go out, blah, blah. I was like, no, no, I'm going to go out because I want to listen to strong poetry and cry.
Yeah.
And many times I did that, and I said to Kelly, I want to cry today, you know. So, and then this day, all the poems are funny, and I'm like, fuck,
Oh God,
I would
bastards.
have been better at home, honestly, because I was feeling like that now. I need to listen to other people being sad, you know.
Do you find
Uh,
it easy to cry in general?
no, no, not easy at all.
Yeah, for
That's
me, I
why.
find it. I tell you the thing that makes me cry more than anything else: watching Golden Buzzer auditions on America's
I
Got Talent,
cry,
Britain's Got
yeah,
Talent.
I
That
do
makes me
it.
cry.
Oh my God, I can pass like hours
And
watching Golden
I was on a
Buzzes.
compilation of those just in the gym, and like I'm the sweatiest person I know by a long way. So I'm pouring my sweat anyway when I was in the gym. I was like on the treadmill or something, and I was just watching these things, and I was just crying watching these Golden Buzzers, and I
Amazing.
was like, oh my God! But then I was like, oh well, at least people are just gonna think it's sweat because my whole face is pouring. But I just thought that I think that the Golden Buzzer is so clever, that piece of marketing, because it's like the amount of emotion that
It's
passes. Like that moment they push
it's
that, the
unbelievable. Yeah.
person on the stage just breaks down instantly. They basically just fall on the floor and have a fit. Everyone's running on. All this like confetti comes everywhere, and I feel their emotion. I feel the emotion of their parents if it's children or whoever's with them. I feel that emotion. I feel the emotion of the
Everything. No,
judges
no,
coming,
I'm
and I
telling.
get so overwhelmed. I'm just like, oh my God, and I just burst into
I
tears.
think there is no person who is not crying with the golden bus. I mean, even if you find your strongest friend, put them a video and let's see if they cry.
Yeah.
I do that with friends actually because it's yeah, it's so many emotions. I'm always scared because afraid that these people they will never get over it in their lives. So
Mm.
yeah, if you think about it, it's something so big, so many emotions exploding. How are how are you gonna get over this?
How do you chase that?
How
Because no, I suppose that like it sets the bar, especially when it's young people,
Yeah,
because
yeah, of
and it often
course.
is.
Yeah, I
And
cry mostly when it's young
yeah,
people,
same,
obviously. Yeah.
same. And it sets the bar so high for their expectations. And if that's a person that is naturally quite fiendish, then that problem person's going to struggle get into that. It's the same I always think about as you move up the social hierarchy, your baseline of serotonin actually increases.
Yeah.
So if you get to something like president or prime minister, you're only going to be there for a few years, and then you're going to come off that, and you will have effectively reached the top of the food chain, and then you're never going to be back at that top of the food. Well, almost most people are never going to be back up there. Then it's only downhill for the rest of your life. So you
Yeah.
might get to president when you're 50 or something. Then it's going to be downhill, and it's no wonder then, people have midlife crises and all things like that because you reach the peak of your career and you're at the top of your hierarchy for you, and then you come down from that, and it's just straight down, down, down,
I
down,
think you
down.
have to be strong to prefer to go down. Just to
Yeah,
be like, okay, I did that, and now I don't need this anymore. I don't need so many emotions. I need simple stuff. I think that's many artists. I mean, when you see like the line who did like just a black line in the white, the painter from here. Uh,
The what? Sorry.
the painter who did like the whiteboard with a black thin line. The simplicity. I mean, I don't remember the painter. He's Spanish. Uh,
Picasso.
no, the other one who has the museum in Montjuic.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know who that is.
Anyway, so I mean, if you go like so high, then you need to know that you have to be happy with less as well. And I think, for example, in my case, I organized the local slams and then the European, then the World Cup. And I was like, what's next? Am I organize a slam in the moon?
Yeah, galactic
Yeah, that's it.
poetry slam.
So, and I'm like, okay, I need to relax. I need to go back to local slams or other events because this was too much for me. And I think when you feel like something is too much for you, yeah, you need to start preparing yourself to go back.
Yeah, when I
To,
spoke to you a couple of weeks ago, you said that you were exhausted because it had taken up all of your time.
yeah, a part of this, it's like many emotions as well, and you have to deal with emotions of like 80 people who were there. So I had a proposal when we started this to get a psychologist for the post-event emotions. Because imagine that these people are maybe, the poets are maybe 20 to 25 years old. So they go to a World Cup, they think that they are the best. Maybe they win, maybe they go last. And what if you go last? You feel like a shit.
Mm,
But because you forget that you arrived because it's not easy to go to the World Cup. So you forget that it's already perfect that you are there. And then you are last and you go back home. But even a part of the competition, you meet people who are poets like you and you have the same interest. So you start speaking just for poetry for 1 week. And then you go back to your country, your friends, they don't give a shit about your
mm,
poetry life. Because these are the friends that you grow up together and you just changed. mm, like on your 20 and you want to be a poet. They don't have to accept it. They don't have. It's your decision. So you go back and you have nobody that who wants to listen to you of how the experience goes. So the idea was to have a psychologist for these people who they need like some time to go back in the real life after a big event. We couldn't make it because of budget, but I think there should be like a psychologist for these big events, like even for the Golden Badge. I mean, what do you do with this kid afterwards? You
yeah,
need to do a follow up.
I think that it can be life ruining or it can be life
Yeah.
creating, and it depends on the strength of that person. Um, and I suppose the support they've got around them. And then you hear all these stories of if it's young people, then the parents go a bit power crazy, and you hear that with musicians as well. And then they start trying to push them into something and forget about the love that parents are supposed to have. But I spoke to I met her a year or two ago. This lady who was a psychologist for the music industry.
Mhm.
So I'm going to invite her on the podcast just because DJs, it's a crazy lifestyle because um,
Many stereotypes as well.
you have you have the late night lifestyle, you have the partying, then you also have being in front of people and getting all that attention and getting all the attention from the opposite sex and everybody coming up to you like, oh my God, you're amazing, you're so amazing. And they're on drugs and then they want to have sex with you. And it's like, it's crazy for those people and the
Yeah.
no sleep and all that. And it's one of these things where I think that if you're launched into fame or notoriety too early without a really solid sense of self and who you are and, you know, some safeguarding mechanisms in place for you, I think that it's going to drive you totally crazy. It's like there's YouTubers now who are like 12, 13, who've got
Amazing.
millions of followers, millions. Like even imagine having like 1,000 loyal followers, like say if I released this podcast and I had 1,000 subscribers who listened to all my podcasts, like
Yeah.
1,000 people,
Yeah.
that's a huge, 100 is a lot of
Yeah.
responsibility, 1,000, and then you get a million and you have people who don't even know who they are yet and people who don't necessarily know anything about the world I'm not saying I do, of course not, but I'm saying that there are people who are basically launched into this.
Yeah,
You know, they make one video, it goes viral, they have a million subscribers, then they just start making other things. They have people telling them how amazing they are, giving them millions of euros and stuff, and it's like, whoa,
yeah.
it's so crazy.
It's crazy.
And you have, you know, if you're, say you're a fitness model on Instagram, male or female, doesn't matter, and then there's loads of people who are just wanting to copy you, and then your fame is because of your beauty, and then your the especially I think it's worse for women, but then your whole identity becomes being beautiful.
Yeah,
And then how are you ever supposed to live when all people see of you is this beautiful person, male or female? It blows my mind and it scares me because getting famous 20, 30 years ago was relatively difficult. You know, there's less famous people and you had to kind of, it would be more progressive, you know, you had to start really at the bottom and
yeah.
move
It
your
was
way up. And
so
now you
much
can just be
different.
launched into fame.
Yeah,
It's
it
absolute
depends what you
madness.
want. Actually, I mean, depends if you care what people think about you. So if you're gonna start a life based on this, what the others are expecting from you, it depends. Yeah, but many people now they want to be famous in one day.
Do you
And,
want fame?
no, I don't. I no. I want to be free.
Yeah, it
I
is
think
a
you're
gift
not
and a curse, I
free.
think. Total gift and a curse. But tell me about your creative process because you obviously write. Do you do any other creative things? Like, how do you fit your creativity in with normal life?
Now it's more difficult because because I do many stuff before it was easier. Because I have a full-time job, so that means I don't have a lot of time. And then I started organizing events, so I had less time. Then bigger events, less time. Then more events, less time. But yeah, I started writing like when I was living in the UK. I was like 23 years old, something like that. So I started writing a bit of poetry, and then I did a course for 4 years on creative writing, and then I passed from many poetry and like how is it like long texts and stuff, and then I decided, well, I saw that poetry was what I liked, so I started writing about myself. Obviously, I started with love poems. Love. I have a book. My first book was love poems,
Hmm.
and then I was like, "Oh my god, that's a it." And then I entered in a depression for like 2 years, and I think when I exploded and I started writing a lot. I have now 5 books, actually 5 poetry books published in Greece, and each book is different. I mean, different themes, more social. Then I have many poems about LGBTQI plus theme, but I cannot tell you I do it this way or the other way. I mean, I don't have a creative process because I do many different stuff. So if I write a poem, it's when I feel it. I'm not gonna go on the computer and say I'm gonna write now. I do what you said before. Every day I write like verses or words on my phone. Everything that is important for any important moment. Or if I have an idea, I write it down. So every day I write stuff and then I take them and I analyze them. So I take it like a prompt, what I write, and then I connect it with other stuff I have in my mind. It's for me to finish a poem, it's not like in one day. I mean, there are poems I wrote for months.
Hmm.
All my favorite poems, I wrote them in the aeroplane because I travel a lot as well. So I always what I write in the airplane. I don't know why. Then I work on it, and it becomes like it's in my favorite poems. But I work a lot on the poems. I changed a lot of stuff since the first version to arrive to the last version of a poem. It's many hours work.
Hmm.
Uh,
Do you find it
s-
hard to be satisfied with your poem?
uh, it's very difficult to finish a poem because each
Mm.
time I read them, I change. But now I think I'm more mature than before, and I can say this poem now is finished.
Mm.
But for me, poems are alive all the time. So there's nobody who can tell you, okay, no, this was finished. Don't edit it anymore. No, you can go after 5 years and change the whole thing. It's up to you. It's your poem. But when I finish a poem, I feel like so relieved. I feel like normally I cry.
Mm.
Normally I cry. I am avoiding writing because when I write, it's very for me. I cry. I mean, it's very anxious. I become very anxious when I arrive to the end of the poem. I feel it,
Mm.
and when I write the last verse, even before I work on it, I'm like shaking. And for me, it's like a very strong experience to write, to start and to finish a poem. In the mid way, it's like easier, but the start, because okay, I know what I'm gonna talk about, so is getting hard. And then the ending is I always cry. I am always like shaking. Um, so yeah, I'm not satisfied all the time, but I can say that sometimes yes, I feel like wow, this is now out of me. Well done.
Yeah. My excuse me. My secret for finishing the poems now is that I tell myself that it's finished for now, because otherwise I'd never be satisfied and I would never be able to finish it. But I just tell myself, no, this is finished for now. I'm
Yeah,
okay with
yeah,
it for
that's true.
now. And then maybe I can change in the future. And that way I'm like, okay, cool. So otherwise I'd be like, no, I can't release this. This is not finished. It could be better. And then I'll just never get anything done. And I think that finishing things is difficult.
Yeah,
Finishing
sure.
is difficult. It's really easy. You know, if I was to write down the first verse of all the poems I've got in my head and the ideas, that's easy.
Yeah.
Starting something is easy. And then as you write the verse, you're like, oh God. And then you start getting more, and you're like, oh my God. Then I'm like, I hate this. I'm so terrible. Why am I doing this? This is awful. And I'm like,
uh,
oh God, oh God. And that's why, like, now I write, 10 minutes each day, but I've got 8 or 10 poems I'm writing or whatever. And then I just kind of flip to one of them in the book, and then I just start writing on that one that night, because it means that then if I can't write on one poem, I can always write in one of them because they're all
yeah.
totally different. So I'm like, oh, okay, maybe tonight I'm feeling a bit more
Yeah,
lighthearted.
you don't have to push yourself actually. You have to go with the flow. You cannot push yourself. Oh no, I need to write on this poem. Sometimes I get so anxious that I cannot continue, and I start like doing stuff to my head, and like I feel it. I'm like, okay, stop. I have to stop. There's nothing I can write now on this poem because I'm anxious already. So
Yeah,
you don't have to push yourself. It has to be a nice experience, not a stressing thing.
yeah. And so for the keen listeners who will have picked up on it earlier, you mentioned your boyfriend. So I wanted to talk about your experiences growing up, because you mentioned to me before that growing up gay in Greece. Because how old are you now?
42.
42. Still looking very young. I think Barcelona, if you want to stay looking young, come to Barcelona.
Yeah,
It's like
thank you.
Neverland. No one gets old. But yeah, you mentioned that Greece is still fur- further behind than Spain, which is Spain is fairly forward compared to a lot of places, especially Barcelona in terms of
Exactly. Yeah,
like
you have to speak about the city because
LGBTQI
it's
plus.
not the whole Spain.
It's there's a lot of gay or queer people come here because
Yeah.
it's safer than most other places. But tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up back in the day. When did you leave Greece?
I left Greece when I was 22, 23. So actually, when I finished my studies there, and I went for a master's in the UK. And I stayed there for 4 years, and now I'm here for like 16 years or something. But the thing is that at this moment, I grew up in my small city. I didn't grow up in Athens. So I'm from Patras, which is like it's the third biggest city in Greece, but that means that it's a city of 300,000 people, and it's very close-minded. I mean, I had never seen gay people on the street in my life. I mean, even now, you will not see two guys
Mm.
walking together or holding hands in my city. But in Athens, it's a bit better now. So actually, I grew up. I always had girlfriends, and because it wasn't even in my mind that this was existing, but I was feeling like something weird is happening. So then I went to England for holidays with my ex-girlfriend to her sister in Brighton. And this was like a
Brighton's
gay
very
city.
gay.
And like, what the fuck is happening here? And then I decided to move to Brighton actually to start there my masters and stuff. And then all my friends were gay suddenly, and I'm like, oh my god, I think I'm gay. I didn't know. I was thinking about it, but I wasn't sure because even if I liked the guy, I didn't know if I want to sleep with this person. That's I think like when you start, everybody thinks the same actually. So then I was very lucky to have some very good friends there, and they helped me a lot to come out. And yeah, then I discussed it with my ex-girlfriend, and she understood. I mean, well, like she's like my best friend, so yeah, she helped me a lot actually on this decision. And then yeah, I started having boyfriends and stuff, and I moved to Barcelona because I met a guy here, so that made me move here. And here I feel free. I mean, even when my parents are visiting me here, they can see that I'm okay here. Because in the beginning they were like, "Oh, when are you coming back to Greece? When you leave your country, your parents they always want you back." But then they realized why I'm not going back. Because it's so much easier to live in Barcelona. Well, in England as well, mostly in Brighton, because then I lived in Luton and it wasn't that easy.
Mm.
But yeah, I think that I have to live somewhere that I feel free.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
very important for us. Yeah, it's super important.
and so when you were growing up, you had girlfriends and you felt, oh, lady's blowing us a kiss. Hello. Um, and so you felt, oh, she's blowing us a little love heart. Very nice. There's a window facing outside, so people like looking. Pretty cool. Um, so when you were growing up, you felt confused. So did you feel attracted to girls or?
It was the only thing I knew actually to feel attracted to girls. So I think now that after many years, I think that yes, I was attracted to guys as well. Maybe because I was playing volleyball, for example. I had always the strange feeling, oh, okay, we're in the shower with all these guys. I, I was feeling different. I didn't know what, but I wasn't like reacting the same, like having fun. I was feeling strange. I had this strange feeling with my coach. Maybe I was in love, and I don't know. I didn't
Mm,
know it at this moment. I had this strange feeling that I was different, but honestly, I didn't know why. And then I was back home with my girlfriend, and I was like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. And then I saw that, yeah, I was like, now I know why I was feeling different. But when I was leaving it, I wasn't suffering. I cannot say that I was suffering. I knew who I am and I couldn't, I didn't suffer.
oh, well, I suppose that's
You know
that's
what I
at
mean?
least nice that you.
Because there are many people suffering because they know that they want something, that they like something different, they cannot come out and they keep it. Maybe they get married, have children, and then they cannot change their lives. But no, I cannot say I suffered.
Yeah, because I find it so interesting. Like I know a lot of gay people, like some from here and then also a few from back home. But my best friend, when I joined secondary school for the first few years, like we were so close, and I think everyone thought that we were gay because he was very camp, but he didn't come out until about 2 or 3 years ago or something like that, which came as no surprise to anyone whatsoever. But I always thought that he was asexual because like he's a good-looking guy, like really outgoing and everything, and
Yeah.
girls were interested in him all the time, but he was just not bothered, and I just thought he was just not interested, and
Yeah, I've been there as well. I thought I was asexual
yeah.
for some period, and I was like, no, no, it's just something else. Yeah.
But then I didn't see him for a long time, and then I spoke to him recently, and he didn't want to have the conversation with me because I wanted to like hear his coming out story because I just think it's interesting. I think it's like it's nice to hear if people are comfortable talking about it. But he didn't want to have the conversation then. But I said, "How long did you know for?" And he said, "A long time." So I just think that like it must be so crazy for people who
Yeah.
when they hit puberty, I don't know, 11 or 12, realize and then live for like 10, 20, 30, 40 years holding that inside themselves with the full knowledge. And
Yeah,
this is a person that he had all of his friends were girls and gays, and he was very camp, very like just nobody would have cared whatsoever. It would have been a very safe compared to most places. It would have been a very safe place for him to come out, and he still didn't feel comfortable to come
that's.
out. And I think it just must be so crazy for.
I think it's because I mean, if at school or whatever they were like, "Oh, you're gay, you're gay, you're gay," then if you come out, it's like you're giving a reason. I mean, to these people. And I think this is difficult as well. I mean, I had this at school, but I couldn't realize why and what they say. I mean, I always had girlfriends, but I had people saying to me, "Oh, fuck God," and then, but I had my older sister there protecting me from
Mm,
something I didn't know, and but then I think this happens as well. I mean, even if you think, okay, I am, and I need to come out, then you give give the reason to these people that before you were saying to them, no, what are you saying? You know, protecting yourself. So I think this is a struggle as well. That's why people they wait for many years because they cannot find the strength. It's not easy to find the strength. I'm telling you honestly, to my parents, it was like super difficult.
but I think in this case, maybe it was his best friend was this gay guy who came out really early. I don't know, probably when we were like 12 or 13, and maybe he witnessed how other people treated
Yeah,
him.
yeah, it can
And
be that
both of them
too.
were really popular, like really popular in school. And my school was really safe. Like there's almost no violence whatsoever. It was kind of full of posh people, really. And but then maybe the people witnessed how this guy was treated, and maybe he was like, oh, I don't want that, which is understandable, I suppose. But
Yeah,
then it just made me think of people who maybe if they come from really like it depends on your background, doesn't it? Like on your parents and how they are and
yeah,
the
of
people
course.
around you. For some
But
people, it must
I'll
be
tell
so
you,
hard.
even my parents, I mean, even your parents, actually, it depends where you live, no? But they have all the fears where they are. I mean, if they go, when my mother comes here, we can go together in gay clubs. I mean,
Mm,
she loves all my friends, my boyfriend, we're having fun. If I'm in Greece, she will be like, oh, be careful how you speak. There are more
mm.
people here. I'm like, oh my God, this is what the fuck? When you are in Barcelona, you're like the happiest person in the world. And when I'm here, she still has this fear inside her. Oh my God, they will say that my son is gay.
I suppose she
So
just
maybe if
does.
I move my hands, it's like, oh, move your hands less. Oh, no,
I
no.
think that's like such a motherly reaction because they don't want someone to be mean to you
Yeah,
because then
yeah,
that will make them feel sad because they'll feel sad because you're feeling sad.
yeah.
And I think that's just like such a motherly protection thing, but it must also make you feel a bit strange as well because you
It
want
so is.
unaccepted, even though it's like it's weird because they're trying to protect you, but at the same time it's
It's
not
not accepting
protecting you
you.
and
I
it's not
mean, at the end of the
accepting.
day, it's like not accepting you completely. They accept you where they feel okay. I mean, no, not when they don't feel okay. And I had this mother the other day. I did this poem in the Spanish slam many years ago, and it was like a coming out poem. And I had this mother came to me, and her daughter was like 16 or 15 years old at this period, and she came out like as a lesbian to her mother and to her friends and everybody, and she came to hug me because she listened kind of my coming out story in this poem, and she hugged me and she was like, thank you so much, I needed so much to listen to this poem because my daughter she just came out, and I'm super happy with that, and all the family is super supportive to her, but we are all so scared about the people about the kind of life she will have from now and on, because we know that she will go to these jobs and they will not accept her or they will look at her bad. She even has a girlfriend and we know her. She told,
Mm,
you know, but we are so frightened of the society for our child, how they're gonna, uh, uh, so the family was accepting their daughter and they were frightened of the rest of the people. It's like for me, it was like, oh my God, don't worry, she will find her way. We are
mm,
very strong people, actually.
yeah.
So I said, if she has your support, then you don't have to worry about anything else. She will find her way. Because if you have your family support, you don't look for love. Because many times gay people, we look for love, somebody to say to you that I love you. because you never heard this from your father, for example, or your
Mm.
mother. So, but if you have this love, then I think the parents, they don't really have to worry. If they support their children, they don't have really to worry. The problem is when you don't have the support of your family, I think, because you can enter in relationships, very bad relationships, because you are
Mm.
looking for different stuff. You know what I mean? You can
Yeah.
enter in toxic relationships because you don't have the acceptance of your.
Yeah, I think that even like no matter your sexuality, if you don't have good connections with your
Actually, yes,
family,
no matter
I
your
mean, it's
sexuality.
probably a lot worse if you're gay because if you're rejected for being gay or lesbian or trans or whatever, if you're actually straight up rejected from your family, then I
It's
think
complicated.
that probably will lead to promiscuity and trying to find that love everywhere through sex, basically. And I think that even if you're heterosexual and you don't have a good relationship with your family, getting into a good relationship with whoever that person might be is very difficult because you need that family connection.
Yeah.
You know, it's the inner circle. And what was it? There was a book that I started reading. It's a Spanish book and it's 365 Teachings of Mother Earth. And it's by a Native American tribe, and each day they have a teaching, and the first one is to do with the family bond, and it basically says that if your family bond is broken, every bond in your life will be broken and struggle. You have to heal that family bond.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I agree.
I spoke with Jacob, who you know
Yeah.
Jacob
Yeah.
last week, and he's had issues with his mother, and I think that some people like healing that bond with your family sometimes it's not actually possible because that person might be so messed up that you cannot have a relationship with them. But I suppose you have to at least find your peace in some way
Yeah.
to be
Exactly.
able to do it. Otherwise, your relationship is going to be so screwed. And your idea of love, you're going to be searching for an unhealthy version of love, which is like, give me, please, 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 please
Yeah.
love me.
Normally, that's what we do. I think. Oh my God, it's different. There are so many factors actually on this because, for example, even if I mean with my family I'm okay now, I had my problems, but I left, So it's like when I left after the first 10 years, I would say, which is a long. I realized that I don't because I live alone. I mean, without my family is far away, so I felt like I'm. I don't know if that exists. Disattaching
Mm.
myself from the family bond. So then you start being just you, creating your own ideas, your own culture. Actually, I mean, or education or whatever you choose, your everything. So this bond starts like fading out. So I think for people who leave their families and they go abroad, it's maybe easier to heal.
100%. I also think that it's really important to separate yourself. Like we call it severing the umbilical cord, you
Mm,
know, the invisible one from the mother, especially
yeah.
because you need that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, maybe in your 20s, to get away and
Mm,
move away because otherwise you're not. It's much more difficult to find your identity because you
yeah.
are still so attached and so involved. And I separated myself and had a very bad relationship with them all because I mean I was drinking a lot, taking a lot of drugs, so I was difficult. I was like not very pleasant and easy to deal with. But then when I stopped all of that and I kind of came back, the prodigal son, you know, returning and tried to heal my relationship with them, my life improved drastically so quickly because you do need that bond, even if you know your parents might not be the easiest people to talk to, or you know no one's perfect, and
Yeah.
you often have very different communication styles and all this, but
But
just just
did you
having
know,
peace.
did you know that you needed actually this? I mean, did
Yeah,
you, okay, so you felt like I need to, this bond, okay. Because I
yeah.
think you have to, it's not easy to see it as well. Sometimes it comes alone and you didn't know that you needed it. So for me, I remember once with my father, we never had like a relationship because he used to be a driver, so he was always like a touristic driver, so he was always away. But I had never thought, oh my God, I grow up without a father.
Mm.
He was always away. And then, on my 30s, maybe I go back to Greece like, for a weekend or whatever, and I go home and my father hugs me when he opened the door, and I felt like, oh my God, what was that? It was the first time, maybe, that this happened. I was like, this was super weird. I felt like he gave me strength. Like I don't need now anybody else to hug me in my life. And it was like, oh, hi. Because he changed. That's really when actually with the age, he became a different person. So I saw like this difference, and I never had a bond with my father, and now suddenly I'm 30 and this starts. I didn't know how to take it, but honestly, I felt something boom inside me. But I didn't know that I needed it. That's why I asked you if
Yeah,
you
no, I
knew.
should go back. No, I don't. I knew deep down I needed it, but I don't think I consciously knew.
Mm,
But I took all of the actions. I started writing letters, apologies, and I brought up so much stuff from the past, and I was in such a terrible place. I dragged them through shit. I even dragged my parents here and made them come to therapy session with me, which was horrible, horrible, because at the time I was taking so many drugs and my whole view of life was so warped, and my view of them was warped, but I was bringing up all of the issues and the problems that I had and the trauma that I felt, you know, and I was just forcing it upon them. And it was so horrible for a few months, but then it slowly just got better, 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 better. But by dragging up all of that stuff, it brought it all on the table and then allowed it to just kind of fizzle away. And would I have done it differently now? Maybe I would do it like if I were to go back and do that process again, or but it all happened exactly in the right way, and it probably left them, it probably hurt them a lot, all the things I said. And a lot of the things I said were unfair because my view on life was so horribly dark at that point. And,
mm,
I was so against the world and paranoid, and I thought everyone was out to hurt me and all these things. But I apologized then afterwards, and I hope they understand that some of the things I said was not my true thoughts. Um, but overall, it changed us all. I think it really did change us all, and now everybody in my family, I think they're much more cautious with the way they speak to each other, much kinder overall, and they start to think about other people and how their words will
wow, that's
affect
very
other
important,
people,
actually. Yeah.
because our family was and is terrible at communicating. Terrible. My dad's a typical man that just he's okay at talking when he's drunk or had some drinks, but when he's sober, very difficult to express any sort of emotion. Um, my mum, she gets so frustrated, I think, that sometimes she struggles to say things correct. She struggles to express herself properly because she gets so overwhelmed with emotion. And when I was younger, I used to read that as anger and like she didn't like me. But now I realize it's such love that's just so overwhelming, and just she's not able to express herself in the way she would like. So it comes out as like, ah, ah, like kind of shouting. And
Yeah.
now I understand that I can take a step back and we can have an actual conversation. Whereas we used to just be at war with each other, like just shouting all the
Yeah.
time. And it's just now life is so much nicer. I can go and I can talk with my sisters, I can talk with my family. And like you mentioned, your dad giving you a hug. My dad came when I was back home. He came to watch me do a poetry thing. He hadn't seen any of it before, um, and I think he was expecting it to be a bit shit. But afterwards, he was like, "Connor," he was like, "that was amazing." He was like, "You totally exceeded all my expectations. I had no idea what to expect." He said everything was brilliant. Your performance was brilliant. Like you're talking in between. He was like, it was amazing. He was like, I was so proud of you when you were up on that stage. And he'd had a few drinks, so it was easier for him to say that, which is totally fine by me. But like hearing those words, I'm proud of you.
Yeah,
after so many
that's
years where I didn't feel he was proud of me, and kind of rightly so, because I was being a prick. So like maybe he was deep down, but really I wasn't doing anything that deserved him to be proud of me. And that that was like almost like the final bit of healing, hearing that and like getting that being proud of myself, because ultimately you want to please your parents.
yeah. Actually, that's what we all want to make our parents be proud of us, and that's like when we lose our parents. I don't have this experience yet, but that's what it's like crazy in our mind because there is nobody else to feel proud about us
Mm,
anymore. So we have to work. Whatever we do, it's for us and okay for people around us. But we always need our parents to be proud of us. This is like a super strong feedback for us. And yeah, actually, for my, for example, my family, they have no idea what I do. They know that I do poetry, I do performance, I do stuff, but they don't really get it because, I mean, my mother, my father, they never read a book in their lives. So I mean, that's my family, and I'm not expecting from them to understand everything I do. Obviously, for them, say poetry slam is too much. I mean, even saying poetry. If you say poetry slam, even they cannot realize what's happening. If I say performance poetry, my mother called me the other day and it was like, "How was the concert?" I was like, "Mom, I'm not a singer," you know. So they don't. They have it a bit messed up in their mind. So I think they prefer not to ask me stuff because
mm,
they don't understand it. It's okay. So, but for me, it's difficult because sometimes I have like real problems with that, and I cannot speak with my parents about this
mm.
part of my life. So always when we speak, it's like how is Barcelona, how is work, if I'm sick or I have doctor appointments, you know, and then for the important stuff for me, I know that I cannot speak with them. So if I said to my mother, this person maybe insulted me in this event, my mother will be like, oh my God, don't go to this event again. That's her solution because she cannot see the background of all this. So it's weird. But yeah, you cannot really expect to understand everything you do at
No,
the
and like
same time,
that's something that I had to I realized that for, I think in my case and in the case of friends I know, fathers tend to care about work and mothers tend to care about relationships.
Yeah.
And that's what they want to hear about. Are you happy in love or are you earning money? And like
Yeah, that's
that's
so
it.
true.
And it's like, and now I realize that I kind of um I stick to those things, because my mum, for example, when I was doing some poetry stuff at home, my mum was like, "I'm sorry, Connor, I can't come and watch you perform. I'll be too nervous for you." And at first, when I first heard that, I was really insulted because I was like, "Oh, she thinks I'm shit. She thinks I'm going to be shit." But then I realized afterwards, no, it's like she loves me and she will feel so uncomfortable in case something goes wrong, and that's just her. That's her, because she would hate to be on the stage more than anything. She would hate to be on that stage doing something like that. So for her, she gets those nerves, and she also does not like hearing about my business, because for her it's all huge risk, scary, could go wrong, and she doesn't want to hear about it because she's too nervous. And I'm like, okay, fine. So she's like, "How's the business going?" I'm like, "Great," and that's all she wants to hear.
That's what I do as well. Yeah,
How,
it's
like,
like say, good or good, and maybe it's like
yeah,
what you say good, so they're happy, and yeah,
and then
but
like,
this happens with people who you love. I mean, even with your
yeah.
partner. I mean, my boyfriend, if I'm performing and he comes to see me, he's like so nervous.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
gets me nervous because he's nervous. This happens with people we love. Uh,
And it's
it's
the same like my girlfriend when she comes to watch.
yeah.
I really appreciate the criticism. She's like, she always tells me that when I talk, I raise my forehead like this. I don't know if you can see it on the camera. And I was like, "What? That's just how I talk." She's like, "Makes you look really angry." And I was like, then I'm like looking at myself. I was like, "Oh God,
Really.
I do look really angry when I talk like this." And I know I look weird when I'm on the stage, but I know she knows me obviously really well. I know myself, but then I'm thinking, looking at myself, I'm like, oh my God, I look so weird when I talk all the time. And she keeps telling me to like lower my eyebrows and, do this and do that. And I appreciate the feedback, but then I'm like, oh my God, I'm so terrible. But then I'm thinking, maybe people who don't know me and see me for the first time, they're not going to know that I'm my facial expressions are different to normal because they don't know me.
Exactly. This is
And obviously the person
too
closest to you,
much
they know
detail.
you,
Yeah.
but I'm like, I still want to know because I'd like to be as good as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when I watch myself on video, I'm like, oh God, because in my head, I'm coming out totally different and looking totally different. You see yourself on video and I'm like, oh God, what's wrong with my face? I look like a total idiot.
No,
I'm
it's
like,
because I
oh.
think the problem with videos is because you cannot see the energy
Mm,
of the performance of what was happening there. You just see the bad things. It's not you just say, oh my God, this I should have said it differently. No, but at this moment, with the energy you had with the audience, this was the best thing to do. I mean, but on the video it's so cold, and you cannot. You will always see. I mean, I hate myself on videos, because there is no feeling.
yeah, after I film all my sets, and especially if I do a new poem, then I kind of chop it and put them on YouTube or whatever. But it takes me a while after the set to actually be able to watch it. Like I've only just watched the one from Enter the Coronavirus, which was like 3 weeks ago, and I've just watched it because like after I finish, I'm like, oh God, and all I'm thinking about is all the things that went wrong in it, and I'm like, oh God, and I just can't bring myself to watch the video, and then I watch it, and I'm like, oh, and then maybe it's usually not as bad as I think,
Yeah, probably that's for
usually,
sure.
but then you wait, but then it's so funny because I would always I always used to think that, when you see people doing these types of performances and filming it, and you think, oh, that person loves themselves and they love filming themselves and they love putting themselves on social media. And for me, I'm like, I hate filming myself. I hate watching myself. I hate putting myself on social media. I hate being on social media. But if
Yeah,
you want to try and at least, if I'm going to bother doing this, I want to give it the best chance I can and try and reach as many people and then open up new doors.
that's
Maybe
uh,
go,
that's the important thing actually, because the video is the only thing that will open you new doors.
yeah, and like
That's
I
well,
I
that's
I
how it
really
is.
strongly believe that the more uncomfortable situations, safe, uncomfortable situations that you put yourself in, the more you grow. Like if you're
Yeah,
feeling
true.
uncomfortable often, you're growing. You're growing, you're growing, you're growing, you're growing all the time. And so sometimes like when life is going too well, I'm like, right, I need to do something really hard. I need to do something really hard and uncomfortable because life's too easy and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't do
yeah.
that and I'm not growing. And so I try and set myself some stupid physical challenge or I go on stage or now my next one is I'm going to get up on stage and sing. And I'm like, I can't sing very well. And I'm like, oh God, now I need to learn how to sing
Oh
properly
my
and
God,
get
I
on
will never do that.
stage. But that's what I mean. It's like part of it is this, maybe it's the fiend within me that's like looking for the next buzz. But I'm like, at least it's a healthy buzz that I'm
Exactly.
earning. I'm earning it by putting effort into something and getting an appropriate reward as opposed to just drinking, eating, or taking drugs. And it's
Yeah.
like that's when you're
Then there
doing
are actually
nothing.
the spectrum is so big. You can do so many stuff. I mean, you can do collaborations. Then I started doing collaborations when I fed up of performing alone. I not fed up, but I want to do something different. So it's so different. And I started doing collaborations and adding music, live music.
Mm.
I created a band through Love Waits. I have a violinist, guitarist, pianist,
Oh,
and a singer, and we do like poetic concerts, like in bigger events. So that was different. Then I started doing video poetry, another project with a friend from London. Uh, there are so many stuff you can do if you write.
yeah, it's
It's like
unbelievable.
amazing, yeah.
No, because I'm exactly the same. I'm like, right, I want to add music to it. I want to do spoken word with some music in the background. I want to make
Yeah,
some songs. I want to add in live music. I want to add in a DJ. I want to add in this, that, the other. I want to start a band. Like,
yeah. Why not?
and I'm just like,
Why
why
not?
not? And people like keep laughing at me. They're like, oh, you want to do all these things, Connor? I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I've got 60 years left. I'm 20, going to be 29 in a few months. I've got 60 years left. I want to live to 100, and I've got 60, 70 years left to do, like you can do this year. When I think of this one year, which is like the first proper year where I've been regularly performing and writing and all that, and I think just how much I've grown in one year and all the different cool things I've done and the places I've
Mm.
been, only within Barcelona and, well, Barcelona, London, and where I'm from. And I'm like, that's one year. And you think of all the people that have probably seen at least, at least 1,000 people must have seen in all the different places I performed. Like 1,000 people in the first year. And I must have performed in like, I don't know, 8 venues or 10 venues or something like that. That's just one year.
And you don't have to be in a rush actually, because many people now, young people, because of this famous, I mean, it's so easy to be famous now, Instagram and stuff. So people for this stuff that you need to work. Actually, you need to
Mm.
pass time. I mean, to hours and hours of work for some stuff. I mean, if you work with a band, it
Yeah.
cannot be one rehearsal and then you go and perform. So
Mm.
you really need to put yourself in it, in this project. But many people now, 20 years old, 22, they just want everything now. They want to be famous now. And then it's like, okay, I performed once. Now I really want to be at the European. And then I went to the European Championship or World Cup or whatever. So now I'm going to start doing duets. Okay, next week I'm gonna speak with this person and we'll do a duet. And then, okay, now I have to make an album. Now I have to record now I have to do this video. No, I mean, you are 20 years old.
Mm.
Just give it some time. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, that's something that that I wish that I suppose there's no point trying to tell yourself things that you would have done, but just slowing down and small amounts of effort each day is much better than trying to do one massive thing. And people told me this all my life. Slow down, Connor, slow down. You're trying to
Yeah,
do too many things.
it's the
Slow down.
best thing.
And now I'm just like, right, I've got 50 ideas and I've got 50 years. So I'm going to do each day maybe a little bit out of this idea, maybe a little bit
Yeah.
of that idea, maybe a little bit of this one, and just roll with it and roll and just flow. And as long as you're stepping forward each day with one more sentence, one more word, one more
Mm.
sentence, one more word, one more poem, at the end of the month, you're like, yes, I finally finished a poem.
And you need
And
the experience there. I mean, if you don't put experience to any project, it's not gonna be good. It's gonna be like half good. I don't know how to say.
yeah,
I mean, the experience is what makes you better. So, I mean, if you performed in 10 stages by now, in 10 locals or whatever venues, imagine if you perform 10 more times.
yeah.
Imagine if you perform another 10.
Mm.
So, this experience is the thing that you can use to start a new project.
But it's like now I feel that I've had a year of experience,
Yeah.
just without any because I don't shamefully I don't practice really. I practice in my head, but I just find it so I haven't been able to practice by myself yet in front of a mirror and all of that stuff. But I've just agreed. I've been waiting for a coach to appear, and I found a coach now. Um, and again, a door being opened, she invited me to. She listened to me do a poem here, like a children's poem. She invited me to perform to these children for Halloween, which, by the way, was way worse than performing for adults. It was so nerve-wracking in front of these kids who were not native English. But anyway, I saw her how she was performing. She was teaching English through theatre, and I saw how theatrical she was and engaging for the children. And I thought, if you can engage children, you can engage anyone. And so I said to her, please, can you coach me? And so now I'm starting Tuesday coaching,
Wow.
theatre coaching, because I think I want to improve my stage performance because I think it's poor now. And I think that my writing is propping me up because I think my writing's okay, but my stage performance is terrible. And so I'm like, that's the next step. If you want to get go from amateur to semi-pro, and then if you want to go to pro and you move up, then you have to put the effort in. You have to
Yeah.
put the money in, maybe, to get someone to coach you. After
Exactly. You have to. I mean, I used to coach people actually,
ah
and in Greece, like almost everybody and all the new people, I always give a performing workshop, either online now, but before I always had. I mean, I was always doing here as well. I mean, I did with Ashling as well in the
ah
beginning, and I did with many people from the poetry slam, the slam in English here. I mean, every time I had new people, normally they were coming at my house, or I was renting a studio, and we would rehearse their poems and their performance and everything. But it was back then that I had time to
mm,
do that now. Then suddenly I didn't have time to do everything. But this was what I liked actually. I like a lot this performing rehearsal stuff. So it's a very good thing to do
100%.
because you cannot see by yourself. I mean, you cannot know what to do.
No,
It's very much easier if you have another person like yeah,
and
guiding you.
I think that um, a lot of people that get into this type of thing have come from some sort of drama background, or
Yeah, many
they've
people.
they've performed before and then they go on to do this. So you can tell the people there are some people who are just naturals, like there's no question about that. But then you can tell the people who have at least done some sort of theatre or drama, or maybe they did it for their exams at school or something. And I think that that's really what I'm lacking. So this lady's going to teach me theatre from a theatrical point of view, and then
Mhm.
maybe when you've got time, you can be my new coach
Yeah, we could do
next
that
year.
because I don't like really the perfect performing. I like the performance to be a bit nervous and to be real. So when you
Mm,
start theatrical, I mean, if you enter to the theater practices, it's very easy to lose. I mean, you have to be careful not to lose your, your reality, your nervous performance as well. I mean,
true.
you have to use your natural, performance. It has to be natural as well because when it's theatrical, it's very easy to lose the connection with the people.
Yeah, but I totally see what you're saying, and I'll be very careful of that because I would also like in the future, I would like to try performance as in being in a play, in theatre, maybe in some sort of TV show or whatever, just to try that out.
Yeah, yeah,
And for me, it's all about being comfortable on the stage, So the theatrical point of it, like for example, our first session, she's told me to bring one poem that's mine that I know very well, another poem that I like that someone else's, don't have to know it off by heart, and the third, which is a speech or a prose or something. So I'll probably do some sort of epic speech from like Lord of the Rings or something like that.
yeah.
Um, so I'm so excited. And then after Christmas, I'm going to start with Noah with the comedy improv. So I'm just all about that, getting
Mhm.
comfortable and just these different experiences and just learning how to own that stage and how to get in the zone. But what you're saying about not losing yourself, I think it's so important because my girlfriend, for like the original poems I wrote, like the ones that are characters like Angry Mosquito and Sweet Little Roach, when I write though, well, when I think of those in my head, they I do them in this voice, like a totally different voice. It's their
Mhm.
voice, and my girlfriend absolutely loves that voice because I spend a lot of my time speaking in accents. I like Scottish accents and I like deep London accents, and I spend a lot of time talking like that at home. And she loves it when I do it like that. And she said, "Oh, you should perform them in these voices because they're so funny." But I said to her, "I could, but I want to be comfortable being me
Yeah,
before
exactly. First
before
of
I
all.
get into doing characters, which I would love to do, like Sacha Baron Cohen and doing Ali G. I love Ali G with a passion, and all this kind of sketch work. I'd love to write sketches and be different characters, but I want to be so comfortable with being Connor because otherwise you fall in a trap, I think, where
That's
you're
the
always someone else.
exactly because that's the most difficult thing to do, to be yourself. So I mean, you have to be very comfortable with you before you try anything else. Because if not, it's again like, okay, I'm hiding myself.
Mm,
So no. First of all, you have to be comfortable with yourself. You need to be natural because people can see it. Whatever people in the audience, if you say a lie in a poem, they will see it.
mm,
They will realize it. Oh my god, this is not true. I mean, they are so smart,
mm.
the people in the audience.
Yeah, they really. It's quite easy to tell as well sometimes when someone doesn't believe what they're
Yeah,
saying,
you
and
see,
you see
you
it, and
see,
it's
you can
like
see it.
it's so difficult. But like I mentioned earlier, I find it easy to perform the funny ones and more difficult to perform the personal ones.
Mhm,
And I think that's normal. But I feel like I always try and include one of the personal ones in the middle of some funny ones,
mhm,
because I want to show me being me as opposed to me talking about a funny character. And even though they make me really uncomfortable doing it, it's I actually since I performed one of them, I've had now people asking me for the videos of it and stuff, and that makes me feel really
mhm.
happy because and even I thought that people would think it was shit. It was like one I did about addiction, and then I posted that on Facebook, and it's had more likes than all the other ones, which I thought is strange because the other ones are funny and people like funny stuff. And then
Yeah,
these
thanks.
are the ones that you're like most nervous about posting, and then you get the best feedback from it. And I'm thinking, it gave me a lot of motivation to just carry on being raw, even if it makes you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, you cannot do. I mean, there are poems that I will perform them once a year, or maybe in 2 years, 2 3 years. I cannot perform it again. Like the last time, the one I did here, it's been years I'm not doing it, and now it will be more years until I do it again, because there is a huge impact in
Mm.
me and the people as well. But me, I cannot do it again now. I mean, no, maybe in a year's time or so. So there are some poems that they destroy you at the moment you perform them. I mean, that's normal as well.
Yeah, well, I was actually. Do you have a video of that poem? Because I was going to mention at the beginning. I'd like to put that in, maybe either chop it in here, or link it so that people can see
I
that
have it,
as it
yeah.
starts. Because that it was an epic. It was epic. It was. I mean, maybe people have already heard it, so this part will be redundant if I play at the beginning. But um, yeah, it was a brilliant piece. It was a brilliant piece, and you're right. I could feel the emotion from you. I
Yeah.
could feel the emotion in the audience. It was it was a deep and it was an intense poem. It's an intense poem and
Exactly. You
it's
cannot go every day to
no, you
listen to
can't
this
do
poem.
that.
You know what I mean?
No, you can't. It's impactful, and I suppose if you do it every day, it will take too much from you,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
it will lose
it
its
leaves
impact
you.
anyway. So yeah, because I was speaking about this with my girlfriend that tapping tapping into your pain to write something and being able to healthily tap into that pain. But then also, if you're in a good state of mind, should you be tapping into your pain anyway just to write something? Is it
No, for
necessary?
me,
Like
no.
you should write, if you want to write something that touches people and you're feeling positive, put that positive spin on it, and there's no need to lean back on that real pain necessarily, but being able to access that, I think, is healthy to be able to access it and understand it. But it's like, should you lean too much on that? Should you keep doing the really intense poems? Say if they're about, you know, some a relatively common theme in some of the spoken word is things like rape, and should you keep talking about that?
I don't know.
When at what point does it stop being healing and remain keep you stuck in the past? For example, I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
not
don't
happened
do
to
that.
me, but
I mean, I just write when I need it. I will never go back to write something just to write a poem, to remember a situation, just to write a poem. It's
mm,
only if it comes to my mind, and they will be like, okay, let's write about it. But I will not go digging myself just to write a poem. And then what I do is like super strong poems of mine, like the one I did. It's called "Believe in Your Murderer." So what I did after this, I wrote the same. I took the same poet and I gave it the title "Believe in Your beer." So I changed all the gay stuff of the poem and all the strong words, and I did a what's called a
parody.
parody of the poem talking about alcohol and beer.
Oh.
And this is like the funniest poem ever. So I
Mhm.
performed it once, but I performed it both together. So I did firstly this one, and then I was like, okay, now I'm gonna do the same, but I read it because I couldn't memorize the same poem with different. And people were laughing and laughing and laughing. And I did that with another poem as well. No, but not the same. Then it depends how you perform the poem. Even if it's super strong, you can make people laugh. I
Yeah.
mean, with I have another poem, Mouth to Dick,
Mhm.
and I performed it once here, and people were laughing. So I got the energy of the people in the beginning, in the first verse, that they wanted to laugh. So my performance was funnier, and people were laughing. And then I performed it in another event, and people were crying because my
Mhm.
performance was like super strong. The poem is very strong, but it depends on the performance always.
Nice. Yeah. It's it's amazing. It's amazing that one day you can have one reaction, one
Yeah,
day you can have a next,
it's
and
super.
it's
I love it actually.
yeah, it's cool. And at first, it's a bit unnerving because, for example, the first time I performed in England, people are less um, expressive, I would say, in England. So when I performed there, I performed. three of my poems in a row, and there was basically no expression from anyone, no laughter, no anything. And I was like, oh my God, I'm totally bombing. They hate it. I was like, what the fuck is going on? This is horrible. And then at the end, people come up to me like, oh, I absolutely loved that. That was amazing. Like, it was so, like, I was hooked. And I was like, why didn't you just at least
Yeah,
express it a little bit? Whereas
yeah, I
here,
can't imagine how it
like,
is.
it's good to have, like, for example, Kelly in her event, she laughs a lot. She's very vocal. So it's really good to have a few people in the audience who
Yeah,
laugh loudly. And then
obviously,
everybody else copies them. And you're like, or,
absolutely.
it's just, here is just so, is amazing. Like, everyone is so
Mm,
expressive and they're so
yeah,
welcoming.
yeah.
But I just, before we finish, what would you say to someone who's considering Poetry Slam? What should they do? They like the sound of it. They understand now what it is. They've written some stuff and they want to slam. What do they do?
Oh God. But do you mean what events or what they do?
Yeah, they want to slam. They like the sound of this competition. They want to
Mm,
challenge themselves. What do they do?
yeah, actually, it's very for me. I have to add that poetry slam is the first step of
Mm,
everything because many people they start from the slam, and then you go to spoken word, and you go to events to perform different stuff. But the slam normally is the first step to go on stage and perform poetry. So yeah, take this advantage and do it. Here in Barcelona, there are many slams. Actually, in Spanish, it's the slam poetry slam Barcelona once a month. Then there is another one in Hospitalet. There is another one in Lleida. Well, Lleida is more far, but there is another one in Sant Boi and another one in Santa Coloma. So all this like Barcelona based outside of the surroundings. So if you participate in these ones, it's in Spanish, and then you go. If you win one of them, you go to the National Poetry Slam of Spain, and if you win it, you go to the European Championship, and if you are one of the 10 best, you go to the World Cup. But that depends on you. I would say just go, try it, because maybe you don't like it. It's okay if you just go and maybe you feel bad. I had this experience. One girl came to a slam of mine and she left crying and she
mm,
never came back because her scores weren't good. She didn't feel good on stage, so she never came back. It's okay. I mean, you might like it, you might not, but I would say try it.
yeah. And so, because you mentioned there are like different organizations, so would you say just search Poetry Slam and find your local one, or
Yeah.
is there a website you can go to which will direct you to your local one?
Uh, Actually, if you write on Google Poetry Slam, it will take your location, and the first thing
Okay,
that will appear will be like your local one. But there's no website that has everyone.
okay,
So it's like either Poetry Slam Barcelona, Santaco Poetry, Hospitalet Poetry Slam, and some boy Poetry Slam. Here, I
okay.
mean, in Barcelona.
And so, so if you're in your local place, um, whatever country you're in, Google it and it'll come up.
Yeah, exactly. If you put Poetry Slam, if you write Poetry Slam on Google, it will come up the closest one to you. I mean, that's what I did. That's how I found the one in Barcelona. I was here like 8 years ago, and I just Googled Poetry Slam, and I saw Poetry Slam Barcelona, and I went there.
Okay. And this is the Quest for Wisdom podcast. So, words of wisdom for, first of all, words of wisdom for yourself when you were 21, a little bit of advice. Second of all, words of wisdom for people leaving. What have you absorbed from life that you would like to transmit?
Oh my God, I didn't know that. I would say um, it's very important to learn to be with people and to communicate what we said in the beginning. And I would say that like when I was 20 years old, I didn't know how to do that. So I wanted everything to happen as I wanted, to be as perfect as I wanted. but then you have to leave space to other people to show you stuff and to make you better, actually.
Okay. Words of wisdom from Makis Moulous. Makis, this has been amazing. I've loved this conversation. It's great to talk to a creative person, great to talk to an older creative person who's had more time creating, and to hear about your life and to hear everything. I will link. You need to send me well, you can tell people now your Instagram.
Yeah, actually, it's easy. Makis Moulos, which is Makis Moulous. It's my Instagram, one word. Facebook, Makis Moulous. And YouTube, Makis Moulous.
So that's MAKISMOULOS.
Yes, exactly.
And yeah, I'll link them anyway when I post this. And another tiny bit of exciting news. I have printed some t-shirts for all of my guests.
Wow.
So they were ready, but the people forgot to print the 4 on the back. So you see this background, it's basically going to be that. It's similar to this t-shirt,
Okay.
but with black here, smaller, and then this thing on the back there.
Wow.
That'll be on the back. So you'll
Wow.
get to be part of the exclusive Quest for Wisdom Club with a t-shirt, which I'll give to you next time I see you.
Thank you so much.
But this has been amazing. Give me a hug.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I like hugs.
Yeah, it's very useful.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll
Thank
stop this
you.
recording now. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Quest for Wisdom podcast with your host, Connor Monaghan. If you enjoyed the episode and would like to support the show, then please like it, subscribe, and leave a review on whichever platform you are using. This small act is a massive help and is hugely appreciated. You can find more information about all of our guests on thequestforwisdom.com and follow us at The Quest for Wisdom on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for exciting updates. We also have a Patreon account for anyone who would like to contribute towards the running of the show. Finally, I would like to thank the Comedy Clubhouse in Barcelona for allowing us to record here and for their ongoing support. If you are ever in Barcelona, make sure to check it out for daily shows of comedy and performance art in English. Farewell for now.